Brittany Homer, and this is Raising Today's Kids, a Project Stand podcast. Today, I am so grateful to have John DeMay as my guest. He is here to tell the story of his son, Jordan DeMay, who was a victim of sextortion. It's a powerful story, one that is having a great impact on youth and parents in helping protect more families. I met John at the Coalition to End Sexual Exploitation's Global Summit in DC last August. And I was just so touched by his story and his willingness to advocate for so many families across the country. He has done so much good with legislation and just educating other parents about the issues and just being a voice for his son. So I'm just so grateful for John, and I'm going to give him a minute to introduce himself to get us started. Will you start by just telling us about yourself and your family? Just give us kind of an introduction.
I'm Northern Michigan. Live in Northern Michigan in the Upper Peninsula. Most people kind of know where that's at. I'm on the North Shore, Lake Superior. I've been here pretty much my whole life. I moved away a little bit out of college for a job, but I met my wife when I moved back. I was in law enforcement for about 3 years out of college. I went to the police academy here and got a law enforcement job. So I was a police officer in the city of Ironwood, a small town in the west end of the Upper Peninsula. And moved back to Marquette, kind of in 2007. I came back and the world was kind of changing a little bit in the economy, and job freezes and hiring freezes were happening. And I fell in the real estate business by accident. And I kind of enjoyed it, and I stuck around. And within my first year or so, I did pretty well. And law enforcement was kind of in the back rear view by then. So that's kind of what I do now. And I met my wife when I came back right away, and we've been together since and got married. We have two kids together, two girls, 8 and 10. So Jordan was a big brother to two young girls growing up in the house. So that was fun, and he was big brother for sure. But um, my wife is a nurse by trade, and she actually we started our own real estate company years ago, and she was a nurse, and she had after Jordan died, she never really went back to work. She goes into the office once in a while and helps out for vacations and fill in. But she actually got a real estate license a few years ago and works for our company now. So we do that together. And so we have a lot of property management portfolio, and we kind of specialize in investment properties. So we have our plate full doing that. And then, of course, the other side of our life is Jordan, and telling his story and sharing his legacy, and helping parents and helping law enforcement and communities, schools to kind of be aware of what's happening online specifically. And sextortion is kind of our arena, but that's even kind of opened up in other things as this journey has gone on. There's so much online harm with fentanyl and different choking challenges, and human trafficking is I'm learning a lot about that. But all those things, we come together, and these parents that come together when we're advocating in DC and other areas and speaking at events is the same thing. It's all coming from social media. It's the platform that's allowing this stuff to happen. So our advocacy seems to boil right down to preventing this stuff from happening online, making parents aware, working on legislative changes at the federal level. We have a law in Michigan that just passed the Senate and the House before the changeover. So it's ready for a governor's signature, called Jordan D's Law, which is a sextortion bill in Michigan to make sextortion specifically a crime, and has the penalties attached to that. So because some of these cases are falling through the cracks a little bit when it comes to internet crimes and different things. And there is a family we actually met in Lansing when we were testifying at our Senate hearings that actually had a case where their son died, sextortion. It was kind of slipping through the cracks, and Michigan didn't really have a specific code. That case was local to Michigan, where ours was federal because it was overseas, of course. But so we're working on that kind of stuff, and doing advocacy work, and just trying to make that a part of our daily life, and doing what we can to help others. So
Yeah, sounds like you're staying very busy and just doing so much good. You have a full
yeah.
plate. Wow. I just want to thank you so much for joining us. I know that Jordan's story is making a difference, and I just appreciate you being willing to share it again with our audience. So it's been 3 years. In March, it'll be 3 years since Jordan passed away. And I'd love it if you could just kind of share some of the events leading up to that and just kind of open our eyes about maybe just how this can kind of come out of nowhere. It's just really unexpected. So just maybe walk us through the day leading up to his passing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good, a good way to put it because it does just happen, right? In our minds, is this never going to happen to us theory, right? And it does happen to somebody, and unfortunately, we're the victims of that. And I'll start by saying Jordan was, really kind of, it's cliche, but he really was kind of the all-American kid. He was 6'2", 185 pounds. He was a dual sport athlete, um, honor roll student in school, very popular, liked in high school. He had a very diverse group of friends. He just really got along with everybody. He literally had his whole life on the tracks, ready to go. Things were just fine for him. He was maturing into a really, really nice young man, and polite and loving and caring and all the things that we hope and pray for as a parent. And he was it. I mean, he literally could have moved out of the house any day and been just fine. And that's kind of where our story leads a little bit, because not everybody in our situation um, had that opportunity to have their child at 17, almost 18 years old, get involved in this. A lot of these kids that are getting extorted online are 13, 14-year olds, 15-year olds. So when we talk about age group, that's a big difference in age. And, I had all the things, and we can talk about that more later, but I had all those parental controls, and I monitored everything for years on his phone. And we felt like, hey, we got through this. And then as he turns 16, driving, going into 17, it's like, he could get his own Facebook page and do whatever he wants whenever he wants when he's 18. So, he's a few weeks away. We're not going to, and I really didn't even have a worry about him being on social media at that point. So I never even really cared to talk to him about it, honestly, or look or worry. And so here we are. But um, that's the kind of person Jordan was. And it was very shocking. Our story starts on March 24th, almost 3 years ago. And we were planning a 2-week trip to Florida that Friday morning. And he and I both love the beach. We love going down south. We usually go to the panhandle of Florida. Typically, we have family in the area. We go down there a couple times a year, and we were getting ready to do that the Friday morning. Thursday day was the last time I had a conversation with him. Really, I ran into him in the barber shop. My father-in-law is a barber, and we both got our hair cut at the same time after school. So our last conversation was in a barber chair together. But he had come home from his mother's house around 10 o'clock that night on Thursday. He was with her, but he had come to our house to spend the night and get up and go to school and hit the road for Florida the next morning. And unbeknownst to us, I saw him for the last time at 10:15 when he was wheeling his bag into the house. I ran into him in the foyer outside, and I was getting ready to go to bed, and I just said, "Hey, how's it going?" He said, "Good," and he just ruled it in the house. And unbeknownst to me, he had just received a first text message on Instagram from a young lady called Danny Roberts, and all it said was "Hi." And I went to bed, and Jordan stayed up and did some laundry and got ready for his trip. He just got done shopping with his girlfriend, getting suntan lotion, getting his bags packed, ready to go. He was excited, and he was communicating with this new friend on Instagram that he just met named Danny Roberts. And eventually that conversation progressed. It starts out innocently, as you can imagine. Hey, how's it going? Where do you go to school? I do this. What are you into? Yeah, you're cute. Send me those sorts of things. And then it was, you know, they send a picture. Oh, this is me. And then, oh, send me a picture of yourself. And then Jordan sends a picture. And as that conversation progresses, that she convinced him to send a nude picture of himself eventually. And that's what he did. And that was a little after midnight. He sent the first nude picture of himself. And at that point, Jordan quickly realized that this nice young lady named Danny Roberts was actually a man from Nigeria. And he freaked out. They demanded money. They wanted $1,000 from him, and they negotiated money. He didn't have that. So they ultimately negotiated. Jordan ended up paying him $350 via Cash App. Um, they during the time that they were negotiating, they were putting immense pressure on it. It was very, very fast paced. It was hard. They kept making him prove what he was doing to make sure that he was doing what he was say he was doing, and they never let him come up for air. It was constant pressure. They knew exactly what to say, how to say it, when to say it, and they kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And even after he paid, it still wasn't enough. They wanted more. They wanted more and more and more. And eventually, Jordan just didn't have any more. And Jordan said, I'm going to kill myself right now because of you guys. And they said, good, go ahead and do that fast or we're going to make you do it. And at 3:45, he shot himself in his bedroom. I woke up to a text message from his mother. I had just gotten up. My wife and our girls were just getting up, getting ready for school around 7:30. I looked at my phone and Jordan's mother had text messaged me and asked if Jordan made it to school. And I looked out our kitchen window in our driveway and I saw his car parked in the driveway, which was very odd because usually he's gone by 10:15, 10:10. So I thought maybe he just had a long night and slept in, and which he never does. He never missed school, never missed the bus. So I went downstairs to see what was going on and I found him in his bedroom. And horrifying, as you can imagine, and also thankful too that my wife didn't go down there or my girls who were 6 and 8 at the time. Um, it was awful, and of course we called law enforcement. The fire department came. Guys that I had been on the fire department for almost 10 years. Guys I worked with that were there. It was that new Jordan. Jordan was around the fire hall when he was a kid all the time. It was an absolute horrible, horrible situation, and we had no idea what was going on. Yeah, it was just mind numbing trying to figure out what happened. And so we were obviously got on the phone and we were trying to figure out did he and his girlfriend break up last night? Did something happen? What was going on? And long story short, we ended up finding out about a day later that from his girlfriend that she had received the nude picture that Jordan sent the extortionist, slipped up and sent her the picture, and I think they were going to try to extort her as well. So she came forward with a picture. We gave it to our local detective who handled the initial suicide complaint. And then, of course, when he saw the picture for the first time, he probably knew exactly what happened. So they did a preservation warrant and a search warrant to Meta under the emergency procedures. It was denied by them at first. And I believe that they tried a couple times and were having a hard time getting through. The FBI got involved immediately, and they probably put it on their paper and resubmitted it, and were able to do it. But at the end of the day, we did get it. They got the preservation warrant, and they got a copy of the transcript of the entire conversation that happened by about Sunday night. I think it was Sunday night we received a call from the detective and said, this is what it is. He had the full transcript. He read some excerpts of it. And he said, it's just super tragic. And we're going to handle this as a criminal matter at this point. And they hit the ground running with it, absolutely running, sprinting. And some tremendous things came of it. And that's where it all started.
Wow. I just can't imagine that that shock, and especially when things were going so well. He's got his whole life ahead of him. You're about to go on vacation. It's
Mhm.
everything's going so well, and to see that and to have no idea where it came from, why that happened.
Right.
Oh, I can't imagine. I want to ask some more questions about the crime itself and the MO of those types of criminals and those kinds of things. But
Mhm.
first, I'd like to hear just a little bit more about Jordan himself. Do you have a favorite memory of him that you could share with us?
I don't have favorite memories, but I have lots of them, right? I mean, he was just such a larger than life kid and a polite young guy. And there's one thing I do remember. He was a little kid and we were watching TV and he was probably 3 and it just I don't know why I remember this, but it was just so funny. He had this Lego bucket that was about 12 by 12 and he put it on his head and he was running around the house and I had a little bowl of regular Cheerios and he was trying to eat the Cheerios through this plastic bucket. And I was just looking at him like I don't know if I should laugh or cry because I wasn't quite sure what he was trying to accomplish here. So But it was just so fun. But that was Jordan. That was kind of his curiosity and his goofiness too. So at that age, I didn't really know if it was being goofy or if he was just being curious if he could eat a Cheerio through this plastic bucket. But his mind was always going. Um, so yeah, that's one thing. But yeah, he was just such a great guy. He really was, and I was really looking forward, and I think we all were to taking our children into that next level and booting them out of the nest and letting them explore the world and go to college and just do all the things, right? And get an apartment for the first time and eventually get married and maybe kids. And he was kind of in that arena. I think that would have been his path. And he would have been going on 21 this summer, June. He'll be 21. So as I see my other friends that we grew up with, kids the same age, I'm watching them go off to college and graduating college now and going off and getting out of their sports careers after 15 years and getting into the real world. I often think about where we would be and what would happen, but we're just constantly grounded with reality and constantly grounded with his legacy, and which is important too. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It must be hard to, have this, to imagine this life that he could have created for himself, but instead now is doing something also very big, something also very important and very powerful, which is for helping preserve other kids, helping other
yeah,
parents know how to protect their kids and those kinds of
yeah.
things. So
Yeah, there's no doubt, and really, like I said earlier, that's really what drives me to do this. And I'm fortunate enough. One, I'm a fighter. I always have been, and two is I guess I have the ability. I own my own business. I work hard and I work a lot, but I'm flexible. I can make things happen in my schedule. So a lot of people don't have that opportunity. There's so many other parents that have gone exactly through what we're going through, and they have 9 to 5s and they have a boss and they have responsibilities that they can't get pulled away from, and they're doing so much as they can too.
yeah,
And we're all in this fight together, but I just feel compelled that, hey, I can make this work. I can travel to Los Angeles and do a presentation for a couple days and still get my job done and come home and still be a father and do all the things. So I feel that I have the time, I have the fight, I have the energy. Jordan deserves this, and that's what keeps me going.
amazing,
And
amazing.
the feedback, I guess, is probably the biggest thing. Is from the parents and stories, like a mother had reached out to me a while back now, but she had seen me on Fox News one morning a year or two before and saw the story. Has 3 teenage boys. She lives in Colorado area or something. Sat her 3 teenage boys down, said, "Hey, this is what happened. If you guys see this," and she explained what happened to Jordan and why it happened. And it wasn't maybe 6 months later, she called me or messaged me and said, "Hey, I just want to let you know I saw you on Fox News. I told my boys about this months ago. And the other night, my youngest teenager came downstairs and said, 'Hey, mom, you remember that Michigan football player that killed himself?' And she's like, 'Yeah.' He's like, 'It's happening to me right now.' So she was just like, 'Oh my God, I can't even process this, right?" And so she was just so, I think, overjoyed that he came to her, but also scared and all these things. So I think we helped her through that, and I think she really felt some uh, sense of security knowing that, hey, this young man made this hard life decision to tell me about this before it got out of control, and she's just so thankful that it didn't go the other way like our story. So it's stories like that that just like, wow, how can you stop advocating for this when you have people like that? And that's just one out of hundreds, really. And people are still sending me messages today. So we're just going to keep fighting. We're going to fight until something serious changes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love it. Okay, so let's go back to, you talked about how you had put in a lot of protections for Jordan, that you had monitored his phone and had all the parental controls and those kinds of things. Tell us a little bit more about that. And then tell us, what you wish you would have known.
Yeah, rewinding back, we got Jordan a phone quite early, something I would never do again now. He was 10 or 11 at the time. And the catalyst of that was his mother actually transferred jobs. So she moved from our area and then she moved to Tennessee for a couple of years, year and a half. And so when that happened, I just thought, well, maybe he can have his own phone. He can communicate with her when she wants. he wanted a phone, of course, too. And so I'm like, well, we can monitor this. It's not a big deal. We'll get him an iPhone. We can, between Verizon parent controls and the Apple parent controls, I had an Apple I was comfortable with. I'm like, we can lock this thing down for, to as tight as we want. And
Yeah.
so that's what we did. We used all the Apple stuff, the porn filters and the content filters language. We had all the Verizon stuff. We actually had his phone would shut off at like after 7 p.m. or something and didn't turn back on until 7 in the morning. So he couldn't even use the phone after certain hours. We had a separate router in the house, so when he was on the internet through that router, it was another router that had its own filters on it as well. And we had that router on a timer, so the router would shut off so he couldn't access the internet through Wi-Fi. I actually made him sign a contract. I wrote a contract with 10 or 12 things on it. He wasn't allowed to talk to anybody that wasn't in his contacts list. I was the only one that was allowed to put contacts in the phone. So if he wanted somebody's number in there, I would put it in there. He was only allowed to communicate with those people. Just different things. He wasn't allowed to use it after 7. No, nothing at the dinner table. So I just had these rules, and I felt, well, we're just gonna make him sign a contract, and he did. I'm looking all over for it. I cannot find it. I know I have it somewhere. We sold our house and we moved, so it's somewhere, and I wish I could find this thing because I kind of giggle about it now, but at the time it was like, hey, we're gonna make him do this. So that's what we did, and we had conversations. I made him read his text messages from his girlfriend at the dinner table. Like, hey, let's see what you and your girlfriend are talking about. We're all eating dinner. We're going to listen to what you and your girlfriend are having to say, and it would make him read his text messages.
Wow.
So we really did everything we could do. I don't think really there's anything that we couldn't have. I had an app for a while that actually mirrored all of his text messages. So whenever he sent and received, I could log in and get it in and get a printout of all the text messaging.
Yeah.
We had GPS, of course, on it and all that. So, and I think it worked. I mean, we got him through as far as we did.
Yeah.
But as I said before, as he's an honor roll student. He's not sitting around in his room playing video games all day. He's out being athletic. He was super healthy. He and I were both in the gym all the time together, so he was just always active and out and about, and I wasn't really too worried about him. So we were just working with him, getting him through, and as he, like I said, got a little older and got more, um, just more adult.
Yeah.
We just didn't really pay much attention, and he's we kept him off social media for forever. He would try to sneak it. He would work around and take his friend's Apple ID and upload it. He would log off of his Apple ID, which he could do on the phone because I had control of that. And then he would have his buddy who had an Apple ID because his parents didn't care, right? And
Mm.
then he would log on through that, download Instagram or Snapchat or something, and then my sister-in-law in Alabama would message me like, "Hey, I see Jordan got an Instagram account," So he was grounded a couple times for doing some stuff like that.
Wow.
Um, so we would catch him, but like I said, after a while, we'd kind of just loosened up and let him do his thing. And he was ready to peel off anyway. And then, here we are, and we let our guard down, and we got ourselves into a situation. But I really don't think there's much more I could have done. I'm comfortable with the amount that we did, and that's part of our story too. And that's what I tell parent groups and parents, and the parents that are listening to this, is that if you aren't doing those things and it happened to me, then you're surely in a position where it could very, very well happen to you. And sextortion and those things now happening online are literally happening to every single teenager on the planet right now. At some point in their teenage years, in these next few years, it's happening to them, whether they're getting the friend request, whether they're communicating with them, whether they bite or not, whether they're sending money, and whether they're dying. There was 40 deaths just from sextortion that's been reported in the last 18 months or
Wow.
24 months, last 2 years roughly.
Wow.
40. And Jordan's was about this close from not being even known what it was, because Jordan deleted all of his history on Instagram before he died. He didn't want anybody to know about this. The only reason we knew is that one picture was sent to his girlfriend. And the majority of the time, these bad actors aren't sending the photos to other people, because once they stop engaging or they die, they usually move on to somebody else, um, because
Wow.
they want to just keep using it.
Hmm.
So it's not normal typically that they would send the picture to somebody else. So had that picture never been sent, that one picture, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. I had no idea. I'd still be wondering.
So that number, that 40 could
That
be a lot
40,
higher
in
than
my
that.
opinion, just based on my opinion, it's probably times 100,
Wow.
honestly. It really is. And putting my law enforcement hat back on, as they did in our scenario, they come to your home, they're investigating a crime because they don't know what happens, so they're treating it as a crime, and then they rule everything out, and they discover that it's an obvious suicide, and that's what it gets marked down as, and it's essentially a case closed issue. And it's not law enforcement's job necessarily to find out why somebody committed suicide. I mean, it's always nice to know, but at the end of the day, if it's ruled that this person did that to themselves, then for law enforcement, they're moving on
Yeah.
unless something else comes to the table, in which our case it did. We opened it up and it went on, but our case went federal. The agents put a lot of time and effort and the resources, and we have 3 arrests in Nigeria. 2 of the 3 were extradited to the United States. We ended up going through court proceedings, and they pled guilty, and they were just sentenced. We were in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and then they actually sentenced them right in our hometown here in Marquette to 18 years in prison about 3 months ago.
Wow.
So one's still in Nigeria. He's fighting his extradition, and then subsequently, there was arrest made about 4 months ago on the money laundering side. There was 4 Americans that were arrested in at Georgia and Alabama area for the money laundering. When that's where the money came through those guys and went to Nigeria.
Okay.
So they've made
Wow.
several arrests, and they were just kind of in the middle of the court process with those. They're pleading guilty now. So
Okay, so now we have two of these criminals who are off the streets for the next 18 years. That's amazing. What a great success. From what I understand, there's networks of these people. What can you tell us about these networks and what is being done to stop them?
that's there's a lot there, right? And I think importantly to know first off with Jordan's case is that this case was international news. Jordan's case went all the way to the very top of the FBI. Director Ray, who just resigned, knew Jordan's case, spoke about Jordan's case. Everybody in the FBI knows Jordan's case. It's basically a flagship case on how to prosecute and how to investigate sextortion because of the way that they did it. They actually made some changes internally in how they look at these crimes and the way that they move them through the investigative process. So it's kind of a flagship case for them. Um, and we were the first case in United States history that had extradition from sextortion.
Wow.
And it's important to know that because all the other families that we're dealing with, dozens and dozens of other families, don't have what we have. These
Mhm.
cases are going into areas that don't have treaties with the United States, and they don't have relationships with the United States. There's a lot of corruption in other countries and other parts that it's hard to locate these people. It's hard to facilitate and execute search warrants and arrests. So all these logistical things come into play, all the political things come into play, and in our case, all the moon and the stars just aligned, and that's important to know because as parents are hearing about this, there's hope for them, and that's we want to be the hope for them. And I know the FBI is working hard, but so many families are not getting the resolve because of all these hurdles that we're running into. So I think it's important to note that, but also important to know that when this went international, we're setting the tone to other people in other countries that we're not going to tolerate this in the United States either. And if you think you're going to sit on the other side of the pond and extort money from people, and we're not going to come after you, you're severely wrong. Especially if it's large amounts of money and there's death involved, we are coming for you. We are going to fuel up airplanes and fly agents. Our agents right from Marquette here flew over to that country, interviewed those guys, and when those extradition warrants were approved by their government, our guys flew back there and literally escorted them on airplanes and flew them right back to Michigan here. And now they're sitting in the United States prison for half of their lifetime.
Wow.
So it's important to note that.
Mhm.
But you are right; these are organizations. Now, our group, these were young college kids. There, 2 of them were brothers. There was 4 of them total. One of them is being handled directly in Nigeria under Nigerian law. 3 of them had federal indictments. 2 are here. One is still fighting extradition. So that's 4, and they were basically young college men. They're in their 18, 19 years old, 20 years old. They're 20, 21 now. They just did this extortion part, and it was interesting to learn that a lot of these cases, they're basically small criminal cells, and they use other criminal cells to gain access and information and resources to facilitate whatever crime they're into. So, for instance, our group of guys sat in a dorm room and did this to over 130 other victims, which ended up being after they peeled back the onion. Jordan was the only death, thank God, but they got money from a lot of the other folks. But what they did is they actually went to other criminal cells who specialized in packaging hacked accounts. So there's groups that go out and just hack accounts and make fake accounts, package them up, and then sell them to groups like this. And then there's other groups that go out, and this is the important part for the mothers and the women to understand, the young ladies, is there's other organizations that go out and package photo collages, progressive photo files on women, and they sell those to these groups as well. Because what they do is they use those photos to sextort the men for money. So most women that are getting sextorted for their images. And they take those images and then they sell them to other groups who are sextorting men for money. And how it
Wow.
works on the picture side is they go and find good looking young ladies online, and they go to their social media and they start pulling out progressionary photos. So the first one, they get a headshot. The second one they go looking for, and they find the picture with their head tilted and their chin up and their eyelashes going, and they find that one. And then it's the duck lips, and then it's this, and then they find the little cleavage shot, and then they go pull off their beach vacation in their bikini. And so they get all these progressionary photos, and they only need one more to complete it. So then they go and extort that young lady and try to get her to send a nude picture of herself. And once she does, boom, now they have the last piece of the puzzle. They package those photos up and then they sell them to other groups. So Danny Roberts was probably a victim of sextortion, most likely. As the conversation goes, hey, I'm Danny. Here's my picture. Sends the headshot. Jordan sends a headshot. Oh, this is me and over at the ball game. Sends the cute picture. Oh, you should see what I wore the other night. It was really cute. I went out with my girlfriend's cleavage shot. Oh, I went to vacation. Here's a picture of me on the beach, bikini shot. You should send me a picture of yourself. And then here's a picture of me naked. I want to see a picture of you naked. Boom, picture of you naked comes in. Gotcha. And now they get $350 and your son's gone. And that's how it works.
Wow. I did not realize how organized and how organized these different crime groups are together. That's horrific. It's absolutely horrific.
Yeah, and I think the other important thing to note about our case too, and probably a lot of others, is there was an organization called the Yahoo Boys.
Mm.
They weren't necessarily a specific gang or group, but essentially was is they were affiliates, and they produced content online on YouTube, and it was there for years on how to sextort people. It was basically a full set of training videos, how to do it, when to do it, times to do it, victims to pick, how they did it, exact scripts to use. They would send them all the information. It was like a sextortion for beginners in a box. It was on YouTube for years. And our group of extortionists were trained by this group on how to do it, and that's how they did it. And there was two people in our indictment. Jordan was one of them, and there was a victim two in our indictment who have yet to meet, and I probably never will because they're not being public. But victim number two was extorted after Jordan died, and they were extorted with the exact same script that they used on Jordan.
Wow.
Interesting part too. I want to add this too because I think this hits home a little bit for parents, is that when Jordan died, they knew that he died. They researched it, they Googled it, they found it on their Google history. They knew that he died, and they waited about a day and they went right back into doing the exact same thing they just did with the exact same scripts that they just used the day before after Jordan died. So that's the mentality of these people that are doing this sort of thing.
It's like they're not real. It's like they're
That's correct.
playing with these people's lives,
That's correct.
treating them like they're toys, like they're playthings. Oh my
That's
God.
right.
So how is it that that script and all those videos can be on YouTube and that's okay? It just
That's where
blows my mind.
that's where the fight is. That is where my passion is. I've always, long before this situation, I've always been an advocate of change on social media. And as I dove into this, there's so many bad things that are happening that tech companies are hiding behind Section 230, which is a federal law that gives them blanket immunity to basically do and allow anything that they want without prosecution, criminally or civilly. and that's where they hide under that veil, and that's exactly the point that we're trying to make with this. And so when I get into this arena, I'm here to talk about sextortion, but when I'm advocating for the COSA, which is a federal bill, a Kids Online Safety Act, and the Shield Act, and these other things federally, I'm there for everybody. I'm there for the kids that died from choking challenges that are all over the internet. I'm there for the fentanyl sales that are happening all over the internet, and all these other things. It's mind blowing what's happening, and until we get some changes, um, I don't see social media companies playing ball or helping in any sort of way. They want to do little things to make themselves look good, but it's almost meaningless.
Yeah. So are you seeing changes? What's happening?
No, no, nothing really. Honestly, I really haven't. And I was at the Senate Judiciary hearing in Washington D.C. last January, about this time, and the CEOs were there testifying, and there's 25 parents with dead kids in there with their pictures talking about all the horrible tragic things that happened to their families, and nothing's changed. Though that bill went through the Senate finally, got passed, went over to the House, was supported pretty heavily by the House, but it never hit the floor. By the time it got there, it was lame duck. All these other things were happening before before the administrative changes. So now here we are, new change of guard, but that bill has to start all the way right at the beginning. Has to go right up, has to get introduced, go back through committee, go back through the Senate votes, go back through the House votes. So it's just so slow in the grind, in the wheels of justice, and in the legal system. Um, and the social media companies are not going to do anything to change until they have to.
Mhm.
And the hard part for me and others that are in this space are meeting people from Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and whistleblowers. And Frances Hugan, I met her, and I've met other whistleblowers from Facebook that are saying, hey, Meta has this technology. If we want to knock this down and do this, they could do it tomorrow. They have that technology built, ready to go. It's on the shelf. For this, they have this built, ready to go on the shelf for this. They have all these contingency plans because if a law changes or Section 230 ever becomes repealed overnight, they have immediate responses to that. And they can inject those things into their system. But they're choosing not to because they don't want to admit liability, most likely. And they're just hiding under Section 230 because they don't have to, all while all these young people are getting victimized, and adults for that matter. But for today's purposes, it's going to be children because we don't have enough time in the country right now to worry about the adults. They're adults; they have to make their own decisions. So good luck to you, but the
Yeah.
kids don't deserve that.
No. Oh my goodness. So what can people do? Like what can people do to make help these things get pushed through and, make changes?
Really, I think the big thing that needs to happen, that it's hard though, is to call your senator, call your congress people, look at some of these bills that are coming down the line, and say, hey, I support this stuff. We need some change, because there's a lot of money on the tech side, and there's big lobbyist groups that they spin things a lot. Like for COSA, the Kids Online Safety Act, for instance, there's a lot of pressure from the tech companies who are paying lobbyist groups to put out there in the universe that all it is an infringement on First Amendment speech. I'm the first person on this planet to stick up and fight for the First Amendment. I believe in it 100%, and I can tell you that that is absolute nonsense. What
Nonsense.
we started hearing that mirrored itself a lot when we just talked about TikTok last week, and TikTok going down, and everybody was saying we can't have TikTok go down. It's a First Amendment speech issue, and I'm like, how is it a First Amendment speech issue? Just because TikTok doesn't mean that not, there's Reels, there's YouTube, there's Facebook, there's all these other platforms. So they do a really good job of scaring people with things that aren't necessarily true. So I think it's important for people to recognize that we need some change, and send a letter or a call to their senator if they can, to support some change, and help them become more comfortable getting legislation signed, to be able to fight the fight.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, sometimes it just feels like such an uphill battle. Like you work and work and work and I've made the phone calls, I've sent the letters and
Yeah,
it's like how do you rally enough people to make a difference and get these people to vote the right way?
right.
Mm.
Yeah, it really is hard, and I think what we have to concentrate on this time. And I've had some meetings already this year, and there's a lot of positive feelings with this administration, because now the Republican Party owns all three chambers. So if we can get them to where they need to be, they will go fast and they will pass fast. Or they're really not going to pass at all. It's either going to go 100% or 100% out. But both bills are going to come up, one through the Senate and one through the House, because they've changed a little bit. But they're going to bring the revised bills up together, and they're probably going to just get passed right through committee and go right to floor votes, hopefully. And we're hoping that it's just going to go quick and start that process. But on the other side of the fence, Mark Zuckerberg has made a lot of changes in his views. And so that could be a positive thing. And I hope the president and the administration are going to work together. And they've said it publicly that Donald Trump just said it a few weeks ago. He's like, I think we can find a way to make social media safe for people and still provide free speech. And
Oh,
so that was comforting for me to hear. I'm like, okay, they're leaning that way, even though Zuckerberg and some of the other CEOs are buddying up to the president right now because they're probably a little scared. I think there's some hope there that we can come to an agreement and do some things like COSA and the Shield Act and get some of this child porn off their platforms, and they can do a little bit better job of monitoring that, flagging things. I mean, there's no reason my son should have had a 4 hour conversation about pictures and sex and money transfers and cash apps and all these trigger things that could happen. I mean, algorithms are smart enough to pick up on a lot of that stuff. So we need to start putting the products in place to make sure that that stuff's not happening. When counts are getting flagged, they're getting flagged and shut down. They're not just operating for months until they figure it out. So there's just so many things that could happen.
yeah, we do so much to protect kids in other arenas. We put the childproof cap on the medicine bottle, and we require
Right.
seat belts, and we have ratings for movies and things like that, but we just don't do enough when it comes to social media.
Yeah.
So I want to just ask you real quick as we kind of close out, what gives you hope in all of this?
I think the country in general gives me hope. I really do. And when I went to that Senate hearing last year, I felt so relieved in a sense because every senator on that committee, 100% of them, Republicans and Democrats, were all on the same page. They were lockstep in making change, and it's time. And then when they told those CEOs that, hey, we're done with you guys and your antics, we really are. And unfortunately, it took so long for all that stuff to play out, and it ultimately died. But temporarily, I felt that sense of like this is the time. It really is. I think parents are fed up. I think constituents are fed up. But this is the fight. This is the tobacco fight of the mid 2000s, right?
Mhm.
And we went through this fighting tobacco companies when they were targeting kids for smoking. And and the nice thing about that is the tobacco companies are still operating today. They're still live and well, even though at that time everybody thought they were goners and this whole thing, everything was turned up on its lid, and they're still operating well today. They're still profitable companies operating like they did before, except they're not teaching kids how to smoke cigarettes, which is the ultimate goal. I want social media to be a place where I can send my 10-year-old and not have to worry about it because I know that Facebook is tracking IP addresses. Like there shouldn't be groups in Nigeria targeting and extorting or even communicating with hundreds of people under different accounts on the same IP address, right?
Mhm.
They're sitting there extorting hundreds of people on this laptop, which has a private address. Every single device, phone, computer, watch has a unique IP address. They have the technology, basic technology that can tell them that, hey, this laptop right here is logging into our account under 7 or 8 or 10 different accounts and communicating with people at the same time. That could, by algorithm, could lock that computer IP address down, flag it, push it to another department where they could look at it and see what's going on. And they could
Yeah.
actually contact people that this IP address was going on to see if there's flags coming in. So there's really basic technology that could happen overnight to stop all this stuff. It would really put the brakes on it anyway, but they're
That would
not.
be that would
So
be amazing. Is there any last message that you would like to give to parents who might be watching or listening?
I would say the one thing that I learned that I never really thought too much about at the time, but I see it now and I'm wide eyes to it is when we first met with the FBI right after the case opened, the agent made a comment about seclusiveness with phones and young people. And I was like, you know what? That's really kind of interesting. And he made the comment that all these cases have come down to the same thing. These young people are in their bedrooms by themselves with their devices every single time. When these young people are being victimized, they're alone with their devices. And probably not the easiest thing in the world to do to a 17-year-old like my son, but I'm talking to the 14 and 13-year-olds that have phones that they probably shouldn't. And parents really should stop giving their kids phones. I mean, that's really the bottom line. And I know that's not the reality for everybody, but if you want to ask me the truth, the hard truth is no, your kids do not need to have phones until they're probably 15 or 16 at least, or certainly not social media anyway, but they shouldn't be in their bedrooms with them at night ever. Those phones should be locked up in the parents' room or set aside in the living room or some other place. They should never be in their bedroom or their forts or their wherever they are, basements, attics, wherever they hang out privately. They should never be doing that with a device in their hand. You're giving your child the access to the entire world in the palm of their hand, and you're going to let them do whatever they want within the privacy of their own room by themselves. It's not a good idea.
And the world access to them as
That
well.
is right. And the world access is not does not care about what your parenting style is. They're going to do malicious things and they're opening themselves up potentially. I always tell people that if you're willing to send your 14-year-old into a strip club on a Friday night to hang out, then maybe you're comfortable with giving your kid a phone carte blanche without any restrictions because that's what you're doing. And frankly, the strip club is probably safer. They have security and bouncers and rules, right? All the things
Yeah.
that are in place there to keep everybody safe in those establishments or they'd be closed. Social media does not. The
Yeah.
internet does not. And they don't care about your parenting. So
No, no.
do what you
Well,
can.
yep. Well, John, thank you so much for sharing your story. And thank you so much for just committing yourself to being a voice for all of these people, all of these youth and parents all over who, maybe have struggled with this or maybe would or could struggle with this down the road. I admire you so much for the many, many hours and the heart and soul that you have put into this. So thank you.
Well, I
And
appreciate you guys. I mean, we couldn't be here without everybody, the media and the podcasters and the all the people that are dedicating themselves. I mean, there's people out there that are really dedicating their lives and putting their security backgrounds and investigative reporting backgrounds together and just fighting this fight. And we can't do it without you either because we need to get this out to the world.
yeah, yeah, we're so much stronger together, aren't we?
There's for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
You bet.
Wow, that was a powerful story. It's a hard one to hear, and I'm sure it's a hard one to tell. So, thank you again to John for being willing to share that story with us and for doing so much good, for being so tireless in your advocacy. One thing that we didn't talk about in the interview was that shame that youth feel when they're caught in the trap of sextortion. Jordan was kind of, living the best life. This popular athlete has a lot of great friends, great family, getting ready to go on this great vacation. Everything's going well for him. And so to find himself in this situation where his reputation could be harmed and he maybe felt no way out of it, that he just couldn't recover, that's a hard place to be. And one thing that John mentioned after we were done recording, he said, I taught him, all the time. I'd say, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't take pictures, don't share pictures, don't talk to people online, strangers online, those kinds of things. But what I didn't say was, but if you do. And so he says, I wonder if I should have done more to say, if you make mistakes, it's okay. We can fix it. And so that's another message that I would like parents to hear, to make sure that your kids know it's okay to make mistakes. That's part of being a teenager. We've all made mistakes. I made mistakes as a teenager. We all did. And there is a way out of them. We don't need to be stuck in those. There is a way to recover from really hard things. And so I just wanted to share that with you as we close out this episode. If you have any comments or would like to share this or subscribe or like, we welcome all of that. We want to make sure that this episode reaches the people that need to hear it, just like that story that John told in the beginning about the mom who reached out and said that this was something that happened to her son. And because she had heard him speak and had warned her son about it, he was able to recognize it and stop it in its tracks. So that's what we're hoping can come from this, and also that we can do something to help legislation pass that will make a difference, that more children will be protected, that social media can be a safer place. Thank you again for joining me at Raising Today's Kids, a Project Stand podcast.